셋. Be My Eye. 안녕하세요, aespa입니다.
네, 저희 인사드리겠습니다. 하나, 둘, 셋. 저희 NCT. 안녕하세요, NCT입니다.
팬미니스 안녕하세요, 레드벨벳입니다.
인사드리겠습니다. 하나, 둘, 셋. 위아. 안녕하세요, 있습니다.
FX입니다. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요, 비나의 에스파입니다.
안녕하세요, 소녀시대입니다.
안녕하세요, 수정입니다. 우리 슈퍼주니 어요.
안녕하세요, 보아입니다.
안녕하세요, Fly to the Sky입니다.
네, 결정.
안녕하세요, 에스파입니다.
With K-pop being one of the leading music genres across the world, the genre as a whole has managed to become a trendsetter in the world of music. And in many instances, K-pop labels have created innovative acts that have revitalized the pop genre as a whole. This is often the case with SM Entertainment. For many years, SM has built a talented pool of acts to experiment with different genres of music around the world. For each artist that debuted, SM had a vision and brand laid out for them. Some were successful, while some were tweaked, and others evolved with the changing times. But while SM is still a very successful K-pop entertainment company, the branding of its acts has become less defined in recent years. It has allowed the gradual modernizing of its group sounds into more homogeneous styles. And the group's new songs are largely interchangeable with each other. This homogeneity hinders the act's artistry and brand, stifling innovation and brand development. Unfortunately, SM has lost some of its focus and has allowed the music it produces to lose its individuality and identifiable style. This is a great departure from how SM Entertainment started almost 30 years ago. When SM opened its doors in 1995, founder Lee Soo-man took inspiration from Western music's artistry and choreography to develop his own formula that could work in conservative Korean society. Lee Soo-man carefully crafted a new system to recruit, train, and produce new pop stars he referred to as idols, where recruits were skilled in singing, dancing, and acting. It's a formula that worked. With leading first-generation acts like HOT, Shenhua, and SES, SM Entertainment dominated the K-pop landscape in the 90s, and by the turn of the century, these acts helped SM become the leader of the Korean Hallyu wave. Thanks to its success in the 90s, by the early 2000s, SM Entertainment was able to reach beyond the Korean market and into Japan, the second largest music market in the world. While the two countries are just a stone's throw away from each other, the two markets could not have been more different. Whereas South Korea in the 90s was a fledgling market, Japan has long been a powerhouse in global entertainment imports and exports, and its style has been influenced by and also influenced by Western culture and music trends. But Lee Soo-man was determined and introduced domestic South Korean acts that could successfully compete in the Japanese market. After tweaking his formula for Japan and partnering with the Japanese company Avex, SM poured its resources into training and marketing new acts, which included female artist Boa in 2000 and then TVXQ in 2003. All told, SM alone invested millions of US dollars into these ambitious projects. This was a gamble for a still growing company in 2000. These efforts were unheard of at the time for an Asian market, and this was before the advent of social media as we know it today. But the investment paid off, and SM Entertainment was at the crest of the Hallyu wave. And along with other Korean entertainment companies, its successes helped propel K-pop into the mainstream force we know today. In the years since SM introduced its first acts, the K-pop arena has drastically changed. The competition in Korea and around the world is fierce, and the acts are more sophisticated. In some ways, the market has become oversaturated. Where once a few labels pervade K-pop acts, there are now dozens of small, medium, and large companies, dominated by the big four companies SM, YG, JYP, and HYBE, which represents some of the most bankable acts like BTS, Twice, NCT, and Blackpink, and so many more. This diversity of companies allow K-pop consumers to choose the acts that best fit their tastes. But it's also forced companies like SM Entertainment to be less risky and less experimental with its acts to guarantee a return on its investment. These changes are relatively recent. If one were to compare SM Entertainment to where they were 10 years ago versus where they are now, they're a very different company in how they approach music and branding their artists. For many years, each group was recruited, trained, and packaged to fit specific niches. For example, the second-generation K-pop acts included Girls' Generation, which tackled a variety of concepts but still showcased strong harmonies. This earned them the title as the nation's girl group and earned them millions of fans. Super Junior was their male counterpart and had a similar vision. SHINee was introduced as a young boy group that had a contemporary modern R&B pop sound, and FX was SHINee's female counterpart and experimented with new pop trends. In time, SM continued to tweak its success formula. EXO helped herald Generation 3 groups when it debuted in 2012 and introduced new K-pop trends such as a more modern sound including EDM, hip-hop, and pop. Red Velvet debuted in 2014 and took some of FX's sound styles as part of their brand. This group split its music concept, with one side focused on pop elements such as electronic and funk, referred to as the Red side, while the Velvet side showcased R&B elements with jazz influences. SM's act development formula largely worked, and the groups were able to develop their own individual musical style and image. You could identify a SHINee song, an FX song, a Girls' Generation song, and so on based on the music, talent, and production. As new acts such as NCT debuted, SM included more members in the group but selected individual artists within to work in smaller acts, each with their own concepts and sound. For example, NCT Dream started out with a more fresh and young pop sound in the beginning. NCT U adopted a new age experimental sounds in EDM, while NCT 127 became the more hip-hop focused group. SM continued to innovate. In 2020, aespa debuted with an EDM and hyperpop sound, but included digital avatars in the group. This nesting of groups within groups seemed like a good approach to saving resources while debuting niche acts. But since the member groups of the subunits were also members of a larger group, they also brought their sounds into the larger act. If you listen to the music from the various SM groups in the last few years, you'll start to notice crossovers of sounds and a sort of seepage into each other. They're becoming a melting pot of all the influences the subunits are trained and developed in. And each group is therefore less individualistic. And to me, I wonder if the musicians, artists, and producers sharing subunit projects in NCT and aespa has influenced more senior acts with established visions, because they're starting to lose the edge they had previously in favor of a formulaic sound. Super M is a mega project group consisting of members of SHINee, EXO, and NCT, and the group's 2019 debut song Jopping can be pinpointed as the starting point of this noticeable change in SM entertainment. Listening to the song, I didn't hear the sounds of the different groups, but instead, I hear the hip-hop and electronic sounds more aligned with an NCT 127 song. This stylistic blending is in other acts too. Fast forward to the debut of the Got the Beat, the female equivalent of Super M, which includes BoA, members of Girls' Generation, Red Velvet, and aespa. Their song Step Back is described as a hip-hop R&B track that frankly felt like it was meant to be for aespa. The new sounds that SM Entertainment has been pushing for their latest groups have slowly started to appear in their more senior groups. Shortly after dropping at the end of 2019, EXO made their comeback with the hip-hop dance track Obsession, which was a stark change in sound for the group. Next one after that was Super Junior's E.I.E.I.O., which was their repackaged comeback in early 2020. And this song was another very heavily hip-hop influenced song, a sound and concept that was also a drastic change for Super Junior. A year later in 2021, SHINee made their triumphant comeback with Don't Call Me, and as a longtime Shawwall, it was the first time in their career where I felt that the song of theirs did not sound like a SHINee song. It too was another hip-hop oriented song. All of these are just a few examples of SM comeback songs that all felt more fitting to be NCT 127 songs. NCT 127 was packaged to be SM's predominantly hip-hop sounding group. This vision was laid out for them, and I don't think ever was fully intended to be for Super Junior, SHINee, or EXO as well. While technically all three of those groups have dabbled in some hip-hop sounds for B-side tracks, they never fully utilized them for title tracks. Over the years, SM has been very successful at having their artists tackle a variety of concepts but still manage to hold true to the group's sound and image. As a longtime SM stan, the company has always been the pinnacle of packaging their artists to diversify themselves across much of the spectrum of music. They captured a huge audience with that and had a significant market share as a result for so many years. Now it seems they've gotten caught up in the K-pop global mania and are relying on what they believe appeals to the masses. Unfortunately, it's become a cookie-cutter approach. Personally speaking, SM is supposed to be one of the K-pop companies to look up to and be the model in showcasing the vast varieties of music around the world. As someone who has written his master's thesis in Korea on K-pop and studied SM Entertainment's history very closely, it's unfortunate to see how SM has allowed itself to sell out in a way. As it continues down this path, I wonder how long it could get away with this before the groups and sounds essentially become interchangeable. At least that's what SM used to do with its large body of talent, but it appears less so now. Its in-house and outsourced music production is continually pushing out tracks that fall in line with NCT and aespa, and I hope the company will see that there are some fans who think SM is losing its way. I really say this with love and hope SM can correct itself and go back to the basics by branding each of its artists separately. The company has a reputation to maintain and a quality music standard to uphold and showcase to the world. Let me know your thoughts on this. Have you noticed this as well? And have you also seen a change in SM artists' musical direction and the trends they're following? Thank you all for watching. Let me know if you want me to analyze other K-pop labels in the industry and see if they've fallen into other traps of their own. I appreciate you for stopping by. Please do me the huge favor of hitting those like and subscribe buttons for me. Check out many more of my videos while you're here, and I shall see you next time.